In this video, I'm going to be taking an in-depth look at the lore and perform an analysis on the Morytania Slayer Tower, also known as the Terrible Tower, Vigorous Folly, and for the older players, coming 2005. Only disclaimer I have is I'll be going off RS3 updates and lore, so no OSRS content, although to my knowledge it encompasses roughly the same, maybe a few differences here and there. I'll be starting off looking at the history and lore of the tower up to the current age the game takes place in. Then, some of the updates and changes the tower has undergone over the course of the game. The story of the Morytania Slayer Tower takes us all the way back to the Second Age, during the reign of the Zerosian Empire. The Zerosian Empire and its respective military was made up of some of the fiercest and most powerful races and people, not just from the world of Gielandor, but from multiple different dimensions and worlds that Zaros had visited. This included various demons, vampires, the Majorat, and of course humans, which by comparison did not seem as powerful or as threatening as their fellow races, especially compared to the very powerful ones such as the aforementioned Majorat, which could wipe out hundreds, if not thousands of humans with little effort. However, one human by the name of Vigora was prepared to prove the worth and power of humans by constructing his own massive fortress, even boasting you could see half of Farinthri, or in modern terms, the entirety of the wilderness up until roughly level 30 on a clear day. Vigora was a legatus, or general, of which there were only a handful of in the whole empire, and also was the only human legatus to ever serve in the empire. Vigora was mocked by his comrades and fellow generals for his supposed weakness in being human, and in protest, promised to build a massive fortress to show the worth and capabilities of humans in dedication to their lord Zaros. This decree is also written on a crumbling plaque found in the tower. It reads, "I, Vigora, dedicate this fortress to the service of my lord. May it stand forever as a testament to the skill and craftsmanship of the humans in his service." However, more backlash and ridicule from others within the hour would earn his tower the name of Vigorous Folly, which caused him to want to expand the tower even further, drafting plans for more floors, deeper dungeons, and fortifying the surrounding areas of the tower. Unfortunately for Vigora, his tower was becoming more and more of a folly by the day, as the massive superstructure had begun to sink into the swampy surrounding land. The soft, wet lands the fortress was built on, despite seemingly built on a hill and elevated, caused the structure to begin to sink into the ground, and the massive dungeons began to flood entirely. This utter humiliation caused Vigora to abandon the tower entirely. Vigora was scorned by his fellow legatus. However, the only legatus that did not ridicule Vigora was, of all people, Zamorak, the future god of chaos, known at the time as Zamorak the Scourge. He didn't praise him for his fortress, rather he just remained silent on the matter, which was apparently better than anything else he was hearing about his supposed terrible tower. Vigora would eventually go on to serve Zamorak, and even directly aided in the betrayal of Zaros. Vigora would then be cursed for his treachery, and forced to wander the lands of the once Zerosian Empire as a restless spirit in the Shadow Realm. The player interacts with him during the Curse of Zaros mini-quest, and learns of his fall from grace and the history of his tower. Curse of Zaros is also, if I may add, one of the coolest mini-quests to do, as it rewards players with the very cool looking ghostly robes, even if they're not the super meta pick for today's day and age. This concludes the legacy of Vigora, and his full story can be explained at another time when we break down the betrayal of Zaros. Leave a comment if you want to see that video made. I already have some ideas. In his legacy, Vigora would prove to be one of history's strongest humans, defying all expectations set before him, and proving to other people that just because humans may be more physically frail or not as long lasting as some other races, there is still a lot of ingenuity and productivity that can be brought to the table. I think Zamorak really saw something in Vigora. I think he saw a man who was determined to prove himself despite what others would say about him. He strived to show his own self-power, an idea that is incredibly important to the tenets of Zamorak and the followers of the Lord of Chaos. This was someone who perfectly fit his ideals going forward, and it's a no-brainer why he continued to serve him, even choosing to work alongside Zamorak during the heist that we see during Dishonor Among Thieves, where Zamorak is trying to steal the Stone of Jaspak from Sliske. One question that can be asked was this creation of Vigora truly a bad one from the start? Well, perhaps not. The abandoned tower would actually be reclaimed centuries later, during the Third Age, by a group of Zamorakian mages. It can be presumed it was claimed after Draken began to take over the region. It's revealed in Armies of Gilendor that gargoyles originally controlled the tower before this time, but they were quickly destroyed or enslaved to the will of Zamorak. The mages began to summon many hordes of monsters and abominations, as well as demons, from the Necrael to the Banshees, aberrant specters, and, of course, the Crawling Hands. There is also a connecting dungeon full of ghouls and ravenous ghouls, which may have been created by or a byproduct from the numerous summonings and experiments that were performed within the tower. The Zoroastrian symbols in the tower were also defaced and destroyed, as per the mantra of the Zamorakians to destroy any sign and trace of the Zoroastrians. One mage even opened a portal to the abyss on the top floor of the tower, completely warping the space on the top floor and spawning hordes of abyssal demons to the tower. During its initial construction, compared to the other massive and incredibly important Zoroastrian fortresses, such as Karadet and nearby Karel, the tower was pretty underwhelming and laughable in comparison. However, currently in the hands of the Zamorakians, it is actually a pretty big deal. The tower is incredibly close to the River Salve. During the Fourth Era, creatures from Zamorakian-occupied Morytania began to attempt to invade the Saradominist lands to the west. This was nominally accomplished by crossing the River Salve directly into Misthalin. The river was defended by, and later blessed, by 7 priestly warriors, and with the help of Saradomin, to effectively prevent any and all vampires, werewolves, and other Zamorakian followers from crossing the river and causing harm and destruction, or simply making them very weak upon crossing, as we see with Count Draenor. Had this not happened, the creatures would have inevitably invaded and presumably conquered all of Misthalin, as is revealed in Dimension of Disaster. Now, of course, it was revealed that this was not the case for the Blessing of the Salve, but that's for another time. It was discovered during the Fifth Era that the barrier erected across the Salve had weakened, and many attempts to breach it were being made near the Paterdomus, the official border crossing between Misthalin and Morytania. Controlling this massive fortress so close to the river is a vital strategic position for the Zamorakians, as it would definitely have played a part in reinforcing and supporting any invasion into Misthalin, and would serve as a primary line of defense against counterattacks. What's most interesting is that Karel, a fortress so important that it had its own teleport spell in the Ancient Magic spellbook, had fallen and been reduced to little more than a few scattered ruins and some surviving tunnels, in arguably worse shape than the tower. So I guess the tower might have been onto something after all, although this could also be attributed to the building of Canifis right on top of where the ruin once stood, as evident by where the teleport takes us today. In the modern era, the Slayer Masters have taken note of the vast collection of monsters and evil abominations still roaming the tower, and many aspiring and veteran Slayers alike have traveled to the tower to fight the monsters and claim their riches and valuable Slayer experience. The tower was released to members on January 26, 2005, alongside the Slayer skill. The tower's difficulty and requirements increased as one traveled up the dilapidated staircases. The lower floors consisted of weaker crawling hands and banshees. The middle floors have more dangerous beasts such as aberrant specters, whose noxious spell can greatly decrease a player's abilities and vitality without proper protection, as well as infernal mages, who could possibly be descendants of the original group of mages that occupied the tower and converted it to this Zamorakian demon center. On the highest floors are the most dangerous Slayer monsters in the tower, the gargoyles and the abyssal demons. All of these monsters are dangerous, but have some of the best rewards in the game, including helpful staple drops such as charms, herbs, mystical robes, later on salvage. The Abyssal Whip was one of the most infamous weapons in the game, and was seen for many years as one of the most prestigious drops you could have in the game, and also the best one you can get in the tower. One particular Slayer Master, Duradel, who was the highest Slayer Master on release, had a unique Slayer challenge involving the tower, in which the player would have to kill several of each monster within the tower without leaving the tower. This was the hardest Slayer challenge in the game that also had the highest requirements. For many years, this remained the top until Kuradel came out, who offered a much more difficult challenge in the form of the Fight Caves. The tower was given a good amount of prestige, where only the most accomplished Slayers would be able to contend with the powerful monsters in the tower. Abyssal Demons were at one point the Slayer monster that required the highest level to kill, before Dark Beasts would come out later that year. In 2013, we would see Marcus appear in front of the tower, who was originally a Slayer himself. He now offers contracts within the tower, similar to Erskine in Edgeville, to kill a certain quota for XP and cash. During the 6th Age, a new resource dungeon, the Morytania Slayer Tower dungeon, was added in 2019. This contains more abyssal demons, but also includes dark beasts with some imps running around. However, this dungeon is incredibly underutilized and even called dead on arrival due to the high level 100 Slayer requirement to access, and the fact that the boosts from the Morytania legs and contracts from Marcus do not work. Kuradel's dungeon and the tower itself are much better places to kill these, as they both have differing degrees of support. With the release of archaeology, several materials can now be excavated from around the tower. These include materials used to make binding pouches, which could be found in abundance here, presumably due to the massive amount of rituals and summonings that were definitely performed or attempted at the tower, so there's a lot of blood of Orcus and stuff like that around. Even today, the hordes of abominations still roam the tower, and offer a unique Slayer opportunity for the aspiring adventurer. So to all my Slayers out there, it's time to head into that tower and poke some hands, take down some ghosts, farm some demons for a little bit with an aggro pot, or kill some gargoyles. Whether you're a low to mid-level Slayer looking for a challenge, or a high-level player with a scythe that's looking to AFK for a couple hours, Vigorous Folly will have you crawling on your hand back for more. Thank you so much for watching this video. It's my first try doing something like this, and I still have a lot of practice in the way of good voice acting and recording, but I wanted to make this video for a while because I think RuneScape has some really interesting lore, and there's a lot of cool history with some of the areas in how they have changed over the years, and I wanted to start with somewhere kind of small and controlled, where I can pick out a few things and talk about the story that I find interesting. And eventually I can hopefully cover some bigger concepts and bigger things. I would love to eventually do a video on something like the God Wars, but to do the big stuff, I need to be able to do the little stuff first. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like or a comment down below. I always appreciate some feedback. And thank you so much for watching. This has been Spoonful. Have a wonderful day.